Everybody, Friday, TGIF, right? You remember that back in the day? Thank the Lord it's Friday. I thank the Lord for any day, right? We're glad to be here, glad to be on the planet, glad to be alive. Every day is a gift. Genesis 26 this morning. Turn there with me in your Bibles. We've mentioned it in the past, but we do read and study from the King James Bible. Might help you, if you're an English speaker, to get one and follow along that way with us. Genesis 26. One of the very few chapters that focuses entirely on the life of Isaac. And I'm going to give Isaac some credit here today. I know I've kind of beat up on him a little bit the last day or two, knowing that Abraham has 12 chapters, Jacob has 12, Joseph has 12, and then Isaac only has 2 to 3 chapters of information about him. But this chapter is where Isaac's going to shine. He does make a mistake. Nobody's perfect. We all blow it sometimes, and he blows it today. We'll give Abraham a little blame for that too. But we're going to look at Isaac and see what the Lord does with his life here in this chapter. Father, bless our time together, please. Bless this study. We need your wisdom. We need your mind. Please give us the mind of Christ today. We ask it in his name. Amen. Genesis chapter 26, verse number 1. And there was a famine in the land, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. Sounds familiar, right? Of course, it even tells us there a different famine than was in the days of Abraham. And here Isaac's going to go down to Abimelech, king of Gerar. Now, some people say this is a different Abimelech. 90 years have passed since Abraham last dealt with an Abimelech. So it is very likely that this is a different Abimelech, maybe the son of the first. Maybe that's a title given to the leader. But it's Abimelech there in Gerar. He is a Philistine. And so we know later in the Bible, especially concerning David's era and Saul's era, the Philistines were a tremendous problem for the Israelites and continued to be. And so, but here they're still trying to use diplomacy and get along, and we'll see that as we go along. But right now, there's a famine in the land, and it's going to force Isaac down into Gerar. Verse 2, and the Lord appeared unto him. So God appears to Isaac and says, go not down into Egypt. That was Abraham's big problem, wasn't it? He went down to Egypt. There he found Hagar. There Lot found an appetite for the world. Going to Egypt is never the answer, even in difficult times. Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. So just as he told Abraham, I'm going to lead you to the land that I want you to dwell in, he's telling Isaac, I want you to dwell in the land that I will lead you to. Verse 3, sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. So, he's reiterating the promise that was made to Abraham, now to Isaac. And it's the same promise, because he said, I'll bless your seed, and that's going to be true as the generations go on. So the blessing of God has been promised to Isaac from the mouth of the Lord. And look here. Here's why God's going to honor this promise, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Let me tell you why this blessing has fallen upon you, because of your dad. Now, that's the case for all of us. We are recipients of blessings because of what people did before our generation came on the scene. We do not realize just how blessed we are. You know, today already I drove on some roads that I didn't have to make. I didn't have to plow them down. I didn't have to cut down the trees. I didn't have to make the path and wear it down. I didn't have to put up the forms and pour the concrete. I didn't have to make sure that the expansion joints were in there. I just got to drive on them. Somebody else built them. Somebody else paid for them. I enjoyed the ride. And that's the way it is with life. We are the recipients of tremendous blessing that others paid a price for us to have. You think of the electric lights that are in your house today, and the fact that someone else had to discover how to harness that power of electricity and make it usable and functional. And now all we do is come in and flip the switch, and we've got lights, and we're blessed incredibly. And so God's reminding Isaac here, hey, the reason that this blessing is falling upon you is because of the price that your dad paid. Now there'll come a generation after Isaac, Jacob and Esau. They will be recipients of their father's work and pain and toil, etc. Verse 6, and Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, she is my sister. For he feared to say, she is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. Here Isaac is committing the same sin that Abraham committed twice. Except, at least in Abraham's case, it was a half-truth. Now, I'm not giving him a pass. He did wrong, but Abraham and Sarah were half-brother, half-sister. Isaac and Rebekah are just cousins. And so Isaac's telling a full-on lie here because he's fearful for his own life, even though God just told him that he's going to be fruitful and multiply, right? And so because of Rebekah's beauty, he's afraid that the people of Gerar, the men, will take Rebekah from him. Verse 8, and it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah his wife. So we understand sporting to mean maybe a PDA, public display of affection. Maybe they're holding hands, maybe they're kissing, but something's going to tell Abimelech, hey, these two aren't behaving like brother and sister. And so Abimelech's furious. Verse 9, Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety she is thy wife, and how saidest thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said unto him, because I said, lest I die for her. He said, why do you lie to us about her being your sister? He said, well, I was afraid you'd kill me to take her from me. And Abimelech said, what is this that thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lain with thy wife, and thou shouldest have brought guiltiness upon us. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, he that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So just as a lost man rebuked Abraham, a lost man is now rebuking Isaac. And so he's saying to him, hey, what are you doing here? You are going to get us in trouble. We're going to be guilty if somebody decided to take your wife from you based on the word that she's your sister. Let's stop doing this. And he says, just go about your business. And Abimelech tells everyone, leave this man alone, leave his wife alone. So there we go. The sins of the fathers now are being participated in by the next generation. And we ought to remember that our weaknesses, our shortcomings, and our shortfalls are going to be noticed by our kids. They're going to pick up on it, and they're going to live out those very same things. Verse 12, then Isaac sowed in that land, talking about planting a farm, and received in the same year an 100-fold. And the Lord blessed him. How would you like to invest $1 and get 100 back? How'd you like to invest $1,000 and get 100,000 back? That's a pretty good return. So Isaac puts a seed in the ground and he gets 100 plants. What a good deal. What a blessing. God's behind that kind of blessing, isn't he? Received the same year an 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And the man waxed great, talking about Isaac, and went forward and grew until he became very great. So Isaac's a very wise businessman. He knows how to work hard. He knows how to be diligent, lay his hand to the task, and he sees the results of it. Verse 14, for he had possession of flocks and possession of herds, and a great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him. So Isaac has grown so great now that the lost world is now looking at him and envying him. For all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped them and filled them with earth. And Abimelech said unto Isaac, Go from us, for thou art much mightier than we. And I'm told that this is what would happen. Out of jealousy, the wells that were digged by Abraham, this is also where Isaac is dwelling. And so they're getting water from these wells. And the Philistines are jealous and envious, which are both sins, by the way, of Isaac's prosperity. And so they say, we'll put an end to this. And they start filling in the wells that Abraham had dug that Isaac is using. Sometimes they use sand and dirt to fill them in. Sometimes they'll fill them in with stones and rocks. And sometimes they'll throw dead carcasses in there. So dead animals and that kind of thing to spoil and taint the water. Then they're doing this to run somebody out of town. And then even we see Abimelech finally says, you know what? Get out of here. We don't want you around here anymore. Verse 17. And Isaac departed thence and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And Isaac digged again the wells of water, which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father. For the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well of springing water. And the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, The well is ours. And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. And they digged another well and strove for that also, and he called the name of it Sitnah. And he removed from thence and digged another well. And for that they strove not, and he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, For now the Lord hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. And so there's these disputes over these wells, right? Abraham had dug some wells and the Philistines had filled them in. So Isaac moves on into the valley of Gerar and he starts unstopping some of the wells. He's making them useful again. And there's a principle here. Every generation has to take their own stands. You know, there are positions theologically, in terms of separation, and even personally. Every generation has to take those stands for themselves. If they don't take those stands, those positions will be lost. And so we have to make sure, as the current generation, that we are taking the stand on those things that are good and right and godly. Otherwise, we'll lose those, and the next generation won't have anything. You take even the position of our own nation here in the United States of America. We are founded upon freedom and the ability to go forth and make of your life whatever you decide you want to make of it. And the government interference is supposed to be nominal, but now we see that there's a generation rising up that says, no, we want the government in control of our lives. We want them putting limitations on other people. And so we have to take that stand for freedom and say, hey, no, this is what we've been founded upon. This is what we've grown up with. This is what's given us the blessings that we have. We're not going to change this. You know, there's a reason as a church and personally, we stick with the King James Bible. There are problems in modern translations regarding the deity of Christ and mistranslations and different things of that nature. Simply, the deity of Christ itself is not supported in some of the modern translations like it's supported in the King James Bible. So we've redug that well. This is where we stand. This is what we stick with. Not going to change it. Not going to apologize for it. It's the book that I got saved from. It's the book that my parents got saved from. It's the book that my brother got saved from. It's the book that my grandparents got saved from. Why do we need to improve upon it? So we stick with it, and we've redug that well. And there's not enough time to talk about all the positions that we hold, but every generation's got to do that. Every generation has to stand on what is good and what is right and what God has for us. And so that's given to us here in this passage. Another idea here is verse number 19. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley and found there a well of springing water. You know, we talk about the valley and the mountaintop being metaphors for life. And we talk about how the valleys tend to be longer and you spend more time in the valley. And the valley sometimes brings the connotation of discouragement or despair. Boy, I'm really in the valley today. Where's the mountaintop? Oh my goodness, boy, the mountaintop experience. Look at all that you can see. Look at the glory of being on the top of the mountain and that kind of thing. Well, what does Isaac find in the valley? He finds a well. You know, no matter how dark your valley is this morning, if you'll look close enough, you'll find a well of springing water. There is fresh water and refreshment that can be found in the valley. Sounds like a sermon that I might be preaching here soon. Verse 20, and the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, we already read these verses, sorry. So now they're fighting. The herdmen are fighting over these new wells. Not only did Isaac have to re-dig some old wells, he's digging some new wells, and the Philistines are fighting them for these new wells. And honestly, given the reading, it seems like the first two, the Philistines capture from him, and he digs a third well, and that one they didn't fight him over, and they were able to keep that. And so there's always going to be the opposition, there's always going to be the enemy, and we want to make sure that we stand fast. Verse 23, and he went up from thence to Beersheba, talking about Isaac, and the Lord appeared unto him the same night. So this is twice now that God has appeared to Isaac. And he said, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee. What greater blessing can we have than knowing God is with us? And will bless thee and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants digged a well. This is the first time we read of Isaac building an altar. We're going to read of Abraham, we read of Abraham building 2 or 3 or 4 altars, didn't we? We're going to read of Jacob building several altars. Here, Isaac's building an altar. It's the first time we read of it. Memory fails me. I don't know if he builds another one. And he calls upon the name of the Lord there. And so, look, how much time do you spend with God? That's what the altar is. The altar is the place where we meet with God. I talk about it at church when we have an altar call or an invitation. At the end of the sermon, we give people an opportunity to come forward, kneel at the altar, and talk to God. The altar is the place where we meet with God. And so, here's the first time we read of Isaac doing so. The more often you can get to the altar, the closer your walk with God is going to be. Verse 26. Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and Ahuzath, one of his friends, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And Isaac said unto them, Wherefore come ye to me, seeing ye hate me, and have sent me away from you? So Isaac says to Abimelech, what are you doing here? You hate my guts. You sent me away. And they said, We saw certainly that the Lord was with thee. And we said, Let there be now an oath betwixt us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee. So now the Philistines and Abimelech are seeing that God's hand is on Isaac. And of course they envy that, they desire that, and so they're trying to get close to him. And notice here, this is the way life is. God's hand is on Isaac. He gets to work and he prospers. And what happens? He has a setback. get out of here. And so he goes out and he has to redig the wells, and that's work, and it probably seems futile and vain. These wells already existed. Now I've got to do it all over again. It's like cutting your grass. Cut it today, you got to cut it again next week. There's no end to doing work that you've already done. And so he digs the wells, and he digs some new wells, and they fight for those, and it's a struggle. And then he gets out there, and now prosperity's returning again. So work, struggle, prosperity, setback. Work, struggle, prosperity, setback. And this cycle is true for all of us. I think we've drawn you the little circle before. Sometimes you're on top. And when you're on top, don't get too comfortable. You're going to come back down again to the bottom. If you're at rock bottom, that's a good place to be because there's nowhere else to go but up. And so you start to go up again. Then you're going to find yourself on top. And that's life. Right there, round and round she goes. So don't despair and don't get too comfortable. That's life. You're going to struggle, you're going to fight, and that's not a bad thing. It makes you stronger. Verse number 29. This is what the Philistines and Abimelech are saying to Isaac. We want to make a covenant with you that thou wilt do us no hurt, as we've not touched thee, and as we have done unto thee nothing but good, which is ridiculous. That's a lie. I've only done you good. Yeah, how about when you filled in my wells? Well, I didn't know about that. We've done you nothing but good. Well, what about when I dug a new well and you took it from me? Oh, well, I didn't know about that, right? We've done thee nothing but good. And by the way, that is people's perspective. People only see the good that they have done unto you. They can never recognize when they hurt you, when they fail you or fall short from you, you see. Next, and have sent thee away in peace. Thou art now the blessed of the Lord. And he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. So this is Isaac throwing a feast for the Philistines. And they rose up betimes in the morning and sware one to another, and Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. So basically, this is a peace treaty between the Jews and the Philistines, right? And we read just yesterday that the president helped bring about a peace accord between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. I'm told this is pretty substantial and significant, so praise the Lord for peace. Next, verse 32. And it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came and told him concerning the well which they had digged, and said unto him, We have found water. And he called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba unto this day. And then look here. Now we're not talking about Isaac anymore. Verse 34, Esau's brought into the chapter. And Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which were a grief of mind unto Isaac and to Rebekah. So, Abraham has obviously impressed upon the heart and mind of Isaac to not marry or allow his children to marry outside of their own people. And here we find Esau doesn't just marry one Canaanite woman, he marries two. At 40 years of age, and he brings them home to mom and dad, and they are not happy. They are not pleased. It was a grief of mind. And so Isaac and Rebekah aren't thrilled with Esau. But this is his choice, and he doesn't care about the way of the Lord, does he? He despised his birthright. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. And this is why God chose Jacob over Esau. He knew the heart of Esau was not interested in developing a nation that served and followed and loved God. And so God passed on him and gave it to Jacob. And we said this yesterday, if you don't want to do right, you don't want to live for God, that's all right. He'll move on and he'll find somebody who does. It is in our best interest, and it is our best choice to choose the way of the Lord. And so even though there's struggles and difficulties, I promise you that the way of godliness is a far greater choice and better choice than the way of transgression. Proverbs says that, right? The way of the transgressor is hard. So if you think living the Christian life's tough, you should try living it without the Lord. Amen? All right, we're done with chapter 26. pick it up here tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. again. So I hope that you'll come and watch with us and read along and study. And if you ever need to, you can always rewatch these. They're here on Facebook, stored in playlists, book by book. Our former studies, Ephesians and Proverbs and Acts and Habakkuk, they're all there as well, Nehemiah. So we're just working our way through the Bible and see how far we get. So keep on watching. We do have a YouTube channel as well. Look, Lighthouse Baptist Church, Flint, Michigan, and you'll find our YouTube channel. All these are here also for those without Facebook accounts. But like, love, share the post, tell people about it, and we'll see you tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great Friday.